everybody, welcome to Retrogaming Superleagues on UK Gaming Network. I'm Zoidberg. This series is produced in conjunction with Amiga Re-Review every 2 weeks, and it's an idea that I've shamelessly pilfered from the pages of Amiga Action magazine. We used to produce these lists every month that would allow readers to see at a glance how similar games compared to each other, and it was an idea that I really liked, so I've resurrected them for the re-reviews. My latest review was for Curse of Enchantia from Core Design. I'm going to be looking at all point-and-click adventures that I played on the Commodore Amiga. Now, I'm not claiming that this is going to be a definitive list of all the games, because there's going to be ones that I haven't played. So there might well be games that I've not included here that you personally really enjoyed, and if that's the case, please let me know in the comments which ones I should be playing. In all, there are 33 games that I played in this category on the Amiga. And I'm going to go through them all in alphabetical order, and I'm going to rank them according to these five categories that you see in front of you: essential, good, okay, poor, or rubbish. So let's get on with it. First game on the list is The Adventures of Robin Hood, which was released in 1991 and developed by Millennium. Now, I remember this one reviewing quite well at the time. Although playing it today, I'm not really sure why. The isometric 3D visuals are very nice and very reminiscent of Populous, but they're way too jerky and slow, and there's far too much use of green, particularly the fact that they use the same green for the grass that they use for Robin's tunic. So therefore, actually seeing where the characters are on screen at times is incredibly tricky. And I didn't really like it at all, so I'm going to put it in the poor category. Next up is a game called Bargon Attack, which was from a French developer called Cocktail Vision. They're the same people that made the Goblins series, and Bargon Attack is a sci-fi story about an alien invasion of the Earth. It's got a nice art style to it, but the whole thing is a little bit simplistic. Also, there are too many items for you to find and use that are a single pixel on the screen. It's not poor. I quite enjoyed it. I'm going to stick it in the OK category. Next up is Beneath a Steel Sky, which was developed by Revolution Software. And it's a brilliant sci-fi story with the excellent artwork provided by Dave Gibbons, who was an artist for 2000 AD comic, working on strips such as Judge Dredd and Rogue Trooper. If you're going to play it, it's brilliant no matter what, but I'm going to stick it straight in the essential category. You should be playing the CD32 version more than anything, because that one is fully voiced and the voice work is excellent. Next we have Bloodnet, a cyberpunk gothic, which comes from a developer called Catfish and was released in 1994. This is an extremely grown-up and dark gothic horror. There are RPG elements to it, in the fact that you actually get to create your character and manage a party. It's a game that I tried to play back in 1995 when it came out, and I never really got into. The controls on it are massively complex, far too complex for a pick-up-and-play title. But if you can get around that, then it's going to be worth playing, and I'm going to stick it in the good category because the controls kind of drag it down from essential. Next, we come to the first game on this list from Delphine Software, and that's Cruise for a Corpse. This is an Agatha Christie style murder mystery, all set on a boat. It does a lot of talking to people rather than picking up items and using them in places. Probably more talking than you would expect. But all of the characters are incredibly well realised. The mix of 3D graphics and static backgrounds works really, really well. Not essential though. I'm going to stick it in the good category. Probably, for me, above Bloodnet. So the next game is Curse of Enchantia, which is the game that I covered on the re-review last Friday. If you watch that episode, then you'll know a lot of my feelings about it. It's got some fantastic backgrounds and the animation is superb, but I think the lack of text on screen actually really hurts the game because you don't really know what's going on. It's also a much better game if you play it with a joystick rather than a mouse. Is it good enough for the good category, or shall I stick it in okay? I'm going to put it in okay. I like it, but I think it does have its limitations and flaws, so I'm sticking it in okay. Next up is Darkseed, which is inspired by the works of H.R. Geiger, who did actually provide much of the artwork for this game as well. It's a dark, brooding horror. I'd say the biggest flaw with the game is that it's actually quite easy to miss important things because you have to do them at specific times of day, and ultimately that drags the whole thing down. So it's got a nice graphical style to it. CD32 version is good because it's fully voiced. I don't think it's quite in the good category, so I'm going to stick it above Curse of Enchantia, but in okay. Next, we've got another cyberpunk sci-fi adventure called Dreamweb, which was released in 1994 from a developer called Creative Reality. It's got a nice overhead top-down view. The interface works quite well. I particularly like the fact that as you move the mouse pointer around the screen, you actually have a little zoom in the corner. So clicking on those smaller items is a lot simpler than you would expect. If you dedicate yourself to it, then it is really, really good and really complex, but it's not very accessible for everyone. I can understand why somebody wouldn't want to play it. I'm going to stick it in the good category, between Bloodnet and Cruise for a Corpse. Something a little more light-hearted. Next, we've got Flight of the Amazon Queen, developed by a company called Interactive Binary Illusions, released in 1995. It's very well written, got a lot of good characters in it. The story does get a little bit too silly towards the end, and ultimately it's not really that difficult. None of the puzzles are going to have you scratching your head. Still good, just above the okay. I'm going to put it below Bloodnet in the good category. Next up is Future Wars Time Travelers, which is the game that first brought Delphine's name to my attention back in 1989. It's fairly clunky to play today, I must admit. The graphics are still what you would expect from the people that made Another World. That the interface that you use actually seems to hate the player and requires you to stand in the exact pixel on screen in order to operate things. You'll be seeing the phrases along the lines of "I can't do that right here" appear a lot. But like I say, good visual design from Eric Chai, but it hasn't aged very well. I'm going to stick it in the poor category, but I would definitely play this before I played Robin Hood. Next up, we have Heart of China, which came from American developer Dynamics. There were a lot of games at this time that were converted from the PC to the Amiga, and they were done rather lazily. This is not one of them, and the developers have done a really good job of condensing the 256 colour VGA version to a 32 colour Amiga version, and the artwork is still really, really good. What drags the game down is that it has an idea of branching storylines in it, but ultimately none of them really change anything that much, and you will find yourself suddenly dying on many occasions. Despite those, I'm still going to stick it in the good category, above Flight of the Amazon Queen, but below Bloodnet. Next is a game that I will be covering on the re-review at some point in the future, and that's Hook from Ocean Software, based on the Steven Spielberg movie with Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman. I think it's safe to say that this was heavily inspired by another pirate-themed adventure that's going to be coming up soon. It's not too bad, to be honest. Problem is that you can complete it in a few short hours, especially if you've seen the movie. The graphics are nice, it's enjoyable enough, and it's nice to see Ocean doing something a little bit different with a movie license. I'm going to stick it in okay, and below Bargon Attack. Sticking with the movie licenses, we're going to move on to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which was released in 1989, the same year as the movie. And I think this game can probably be credited with making the point-and-click adventure game a mainstream thing, because it does a brilliant job of following the story of the movie. cuts out bits that aren't necessary for the game, adds in extra bits to flesh out the story. Knowledge of the film helps, certainly towards the end, but it's not essential. I'm going to stick it in the good category. And put it above Flight of the Amazon Queen, above Heart of China, yes. And for me, I'd stick it above Bloodnet as well, actually. Now we come to Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. All 11 discs of it, as it was when it was released on the Amiga back in 1993. For many years, this was the fourth adventure for Indiana Jones. And to be honest, they should have made this one into a movie instead of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. If you didn't have a hard drive, there was a lot of disc swapping for this one, as you can imagine. It doesn't detract from the fantastic story, though. I'm going to stick it in Essential. It's not as good as Beneath the Steel Sky for me, but it's definitely one of the games in this genre that everybody should play. Now we come to Innocent Until Caught, which is another sci-fi one. It's got a really nice idea of somebody who's being pursued across space by the IRS, and is then forced to do work for them. But ultimately, it really squanders that idea and doesn't really do anything that you haven't seen before. There's too many jokes in it that simply aren't funny, and the mouse pointer on screen is incredibly slow, which makes it a bit of a chore to play. So, disappointingly, I'm going to stick it in the poor category. But above Future Wars, if it'll let me. Will it let me go above Future Wars? Yes, it will. There we go. Now we come to Sierra's King's Quest series, of which King's Quest V was the first that was an actual point-and-click adventure. All the ones prior to this had required text input from the player and keyboards for movement. It's one of the games that Sierra didn't put a lot of effort into when they transferred it to the Amiga. Some of the puzzles in it are incredibly obscure, and you're not going to complete them without a guide. Not helped by the painfully slow movement of the character. If you're going to play King's Quest V, play the PC version. Don't play it on the Amiga. And for that reason, I'm going to stick it under poor. Just below Future Wars. Then we come to King's Quest VI, which was actually converted to the Amiga by Revolution Software, same people that made Beneath the Steel Sky. In terms of story, this is a lot better than King's Quest V. It's considered by many people to be the best game in the King's Quest series. Graphically, it's better. They've done a better job of converting this to the Amiga than they did with King's Quest V. I'm going to stick it. I'm going to put it in the good category. And I think this is going to go just below Heart of China. Next up, we come to The Legend of Kyrandia. This was actually Legend of Kyrandia Book 1. Sadly, the Amiga never got Book 2 or 3, which both remained on the PC, and only the PC. It's developed by Westwood Studios, who were probably best known for the Command & Conquer series. But as far as point-and-click adventure games are concerned, they would go on to make the excellent Blade Runner game on the PC a few years later. Legend of Kyrandia is a beautiful looking game. The graphics are excellent. I'd say it's one of the best looking games on this list. What stops it from being in the essential category is that too many of the puzzles in it rely on trial and error rather than actually using your brain to solve them. It definitely deserves to be in the good category. It's not better than Indiana Jones though. Better than Bloodnet? Probably yes. So yeah, just below Indiana Jones and above Bloodnet. Now we come to a couple of Leisure Suit Larry games, which are probably quite infamous. Leisure Suit Larry 5, because it is actually the fourth game in the series. The joke is that Larry fell asleep and slept through the fourth story, going straight to Leisure Suit Larry 5. And that's probably the funniest joke in the game. The jokes have not aged well. The graphics are frankly terrible. They didn't even bother trying to recolor them and make them look nice on the Amiga. It's rubbish, and I'm going to put that straight in the rubbish category. Then we come to the remake of Leisure Suit Larry 1, which again The jokes are very outdated and don't work well in 2023. To be honest, the whole thing is nowhere near as funny as it thinks it is, unless you're a 13-year-old, which in 1987 I was when I first played it. So I thought it was hilarious back then. And there is one major flaw in the game in that towards the end of the story grinds to a halt for a number of hours while it forces you to play casino games in order to earn enough money to progress. And frankly, I thought that was an incredibly baffling decision. It's definitely better than Leisure Suit Larry 5. Is it worth putting above the rubbish category, or shall I put it down the bottom there? I know, I'm going to put it below Robin Hood, but I'm going to leave it in poor. Next, we come to Loom, which was from another one developed by Lucasfilm Games. This has got a very minimalist approach to the controls, and that works really, really nicely, to be honest. There's a nice graphical style to it. The mouse controls are, like I say, are very simplified. I'm going to put it in the OK category, to be honest. I'm going to put it above Bargon Attack, but below Curse of Enchantia. Next, we come to Lure of the Temptress, which was the first game from Revolution Software, people behind Beneath a Steel Sky. It introduced a new system into the game called Virtual Theatre, which allowed the NPCs in the town to wander around and live their lives, so you could find them in different places at different times, and it worked really, really well. It made the whole thing feel lived in. Disappointingly, the game is very short. I mean, it only comes on 4 discs. It ended just as I was really getting into the story, and then suddenly the climax happened, and that I always remember being incredibly disappointing. But it's still worth playing. I'm going to put it in the OK category, above Darkseed. Go on, let me put it above Darkseed. Thank you. Now we come to the game that started it all for Lucasfilm, Maniac Mansion. This was the first Lucasfilm game that I ever played. It's pretty infamous among adventure gamers, to be honest. It's got a hilarious plot with great replay value, thanks to the fact that you've got multiple characters to choose from. Compared to the games that followed it, yes, it is a little bit basic. That doesn't stop me from wanting to play it from time to time, though. Indiana Jones was better. I'm going to stick it above Bloodnet. I'm going to stick it between Bloodnet and Legend of Kyrandia. It's definitely a good game, and one that I would recommend you play. Now we come to Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge, which is probably as close to perfect as a game would ever get. I didn't personally find any of the puzzles in it to be obscure, like some people did. Using a petrified monkey as a monkey wrench was blatantly obvious as far as I was concerned. But the whole thing is so funny and well written that I remember wanting to speak to every single character and investigate everything just to see what the developers had come up with. This is superb. If you haven't played Monkey Island 2, then you absolutely should. I would place it in my top 3 games of all time. I'm going to put it above Beneath a Steel Sky in the Essential category. Now we come to Nippon Safes Incorporated, which was from a developer from Italy, and yeah, some of the English translation is not particularly great, but it has a really nice idea where you can play through the entire story from 3 different points of view, and you can actually switch between those points of view at any time. So if you get stuck, you can just switch to a different character and play as them for a bit. Not hilarious, but it's got a nice light-hearted tone through it, and I quite like the visuals as well, so I'm going to put that in the good category. Some good games in that good category. I'm going to put it down the bottom where Flight of the Amazon Queen is. Now we come to Operation Stealth, which is another one from Delphine. This followed hot on the heels of Future Wars. It's a James Bond style espionage adventure, and it had a really good plot that kept me interested all the way through. Like Future Wars, the game interface has not aged particularly well and is quite clunky and hard to use. I think I would rather play this today than Future Wars. I'm going to stick it in the OK category. Below Hook, but still in the OK category. Now we come to Plan 9 from Outer Space, which I remember in 1992 it was quite novel. Somebody had come up with the idea of making a game based on the most notoriously bad movie ever made. That novelty value probably skewed some of the reviews at the time. It's terrible. I really didn't like it. It completely wastes the good idea that it has, which is that you play as a detective who is looking for the 6 film reels, and you then have to edit them together after you've done that. But it's an absolute chore to play. There's not that many locations. It's ugly to look at. I'm going to put it in the rubbish category, but Leisure Suit Larry 5 is worse. So it's at least got that going for it. Now we come to Police Quest 3: The Kindred. Not as terrible as some of the other Sierra Online games went for being transferred to the Amiga, and it's also saved by the fact that the actual storyline and the mystery is really compelling, and you really want to solve it. The unfortunate side of it is that it's got a little bit too much attention to detail to police procedure. That makes it quite fiddly to play. Okay is the category that I'm going to put it in, just below Operation Stealth. It's not poor, but like I say, the mystery you still want to play. So yeah, I'm going to put that in the okay category. Now we come to The Secret of Monkey Island. You can take everything that I said about Monkey Island 2 and apply it to this one, just a little less so. It will always be remembered as the game that introduced insult sword fighting to the world. If you are planning on playing Monkey Island 2, then you absolutely should play this one first, as it enhances the sequel to have knowledge of this one. A lot of the jokes in the second one refer to things that happen in the first. So I'm still going to put it in the essential category, but below Fate of Atlantis. Now we come to Simon the Sorcerer, which is a very enjoyable fantasy adventure that manages to walk that tightrope between being spoof and celebration without falling over onto either side. If you're playing it on the A1200 or the CD32, the graphics are also excellent. If you are going to play it, play the CD32 version though, because otherwise you'll be depriving yourself of the excellent voice work from Chris Barry, aka Rimmer from Red Dwarf, who provides the voice of Simon and is very, very funny. It's definitely an essential adventure. I'm going to put it above Monkey Island, first one, and below Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. Next up, we have Space Quest Chapter 1, The Saurian Encounter, which is actually the remake of the very first Space Quest game. And out of all the Sierra Online series, Space Quest is probably the one that passed me by. I never really played it back in the day. Space Quest Chapter 1, I played a little bit of the PC version, and the Amiga version is a poor imitation of that PC version. It's definitely better than Leisure Suit Larry. It's probably better than King's Quest V as well, to be honest. The Amiga version does look ugly though. So I'm going to leave it in the poor category and just below Future Wars. Next up is Universe from Core Design, which is the other adventure game that they made after Curse of Enchantia. A lot of the flaws that Curse of Enchantia suffered from were not present in this one. They definitely learnt from the experience of not having text on screen, because this one has a lot of it, and you actually do understand what's going on. The icon interface works a lot better this time. Main issue is that it does take a very long time for the plot to actually get going before things finally start to click into place. It's not enough to move it up into the good category, but I'm going to put it between Lure of the Temptress and Darkseed in the OK category. And so finally we come to Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders, which was another Lucasfilm Games release. At first came out in 1988, and unfortunately I didn't really play it at that time. It wasn't until after I'd played Maniac Mansion and The Secret of Monkey Island that I actually went back and played this one. It's a little bit basic by comparison. Still pretty funny in places. There's a lot of dead ends that you can go down, and there's no warning that you'll have used an item incorrectly or not used something at all. It's one for Lucasfilm completists only. It's not poor, but I'm going to stick it in the OK category. Put it below Operation Stealth but above Police Quest. Okay, so there you go. That's your Super League for point-and-click adventure games on the Amiga. If you disagree with any of the positions that I've put these games in, then let me know in the comments. Like I said at the beginning, there's games that I've not played that will not be included here. Make sure you come back for the next Super League video in 2 weeks' time. And don't forget, we've got another re-review coming next Friday. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Happy retro gaming.